people to know.
You know, you've said earlier, and you've said a couple times that you also co-authored a piece for Time with Zach Williams. People, I think, remember the late comedian Robin Williams, who took his own life, and his son, Zach, and you have worked together on some of these issues and trying to highlight them. One of the things you say in your piece, and you just said now, is that there's two basic reasons why so many Americans don't address mental health. They're either afraid or discouraged from getting help, or they don't know how to get it. I mean, but forgive me, but isn't there a third problem here, which is that our access points are broken? I mean, healthcare in the United States is expensive. It is not widely available in some places, at least the kind of culturally competent care that you're talking about that is so essential. I mean, it's part of the problem that our delivery systems are broken. I mean, I guess this is another way of asking, are the people to offer this service really there? Do we really have the infrastructure to treat this problem?
It's a great question, because there are a lot of issues with mental health care in America, and we've highlighted the top two, but you raise a third, which is simply getting access to that care. Like, if you might be able to talk to someone at 988, but then how are you going to get the long-term therapy that you need? A fourth or fifth issue is that we just don't have the clinicians. We just don't have the therapists out there who can provide this long-term care. So no, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of work we have to do on mental health care in America. But the most important thing we can do to save lives is just get people help in that critical moment. If you can get them through that, then they are in a much better position to survive long term. But as someone who still sees a therapist myself, just to proactively take care of my mental health, to check in every once in a while, because I think it makes me a better dad, a better husband, a better congressman to do so. I know that it's hard to get an appointment with a therapist, and that's a problem all over America. So don't get me wrong, this is a first step, but there's a lot more work we have to do.
And what is that work, though? What's the plan for that, for increasing the capacity there?
Well, we have to get more people to go into the field is one thing we have to do. So we're looking at ways that we can incentivize more people to go into mental health. One of the things that I've always fought for is called parity in healthcare. So mental health is treated the same as physical health. That also means that it's reimbursed the same for our caregivers, because a lot of doctors don't go into mental health because they don't see the kind of financial returns that you get from being a surgeon or something like that. That's something that we need to change as well. We also just need to normalize care. I mean, my vision is to get to a point where everyone has an annual mental health checkup the same way that you have an annual physical. I mean, if I told you that after this interview I was going for my annual physical, you wouldn't look at me and say, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you?" Or you wouldn't think that. You would just say, "Well, of course, you're getting your annual physical. That doesn't mean you're sick. You're just getting a checkup." Well, imagine the difference if I told you right after this interview, I'm going to see a psychiatrist. I'm going to get a mental health appointment. You know, the natural reaction that we all have to that is, my gosh, what's wrong? We've got to change that. We've got to get to a point where getting a mental health checkup is as routine as an annual physical. And I'd like to see that happen for every high schooler in America. That's really my vision here and my goal, to set an example when kids are pretty young that this is okay. But to get there will require a lot more clinicians. You're absolutely right. And so that's another issue that my colleagues and I in Congress on the Mental Health Caucus, people who really care about these issues and recognize what a difference addressing them can make in people's lives, this is one of the many things that we continue to work on.
Do you feel that that you've helped to diminish the stigma in some way, even among your colleagues and your peer group?
A little, and I mean, my colleagues tell me that. They tell me that it's made a difference to hear me share my story. But I'll tell you, I mean, I thought this could very well end my political career. It was a big gamble for me to come out and publicly share this. You know, when you run for office, your friends ask you, okay, what's the skeleton in your closet? You know, what's the thing that you don't want people to hear about? And this was it for me. This was my big skeleton when I first ran. I mean, I only told a couple of people on my team that I saw a therapist because I knew how damaging this could be to a career in politics. So we had a long way to go. But I do think, so we've got a long way to go, but I do think we are making progress. And I do think it's getting better.
What about people who have security clearances? I mean, that's been a factor. You know, that's another factor, frankly. I know it's very specific to certain fields, but, you know, is this the kind of thing that's going to be held against you if you need a security clearance to work in, say, intelligence or in law enforcement, for example?
That is a great question, because a short answer is often yes. And that's something that we need to change. We had a vote on that recently in the House of Representatives to try to change that policy. Because look, I mean, honestly, it's some of the people who have the most experience, who have been in the worst situations overseas, who you want working in these positions, and yet they're obviously the people who are most susceptible to these issues. But what Americans need to know is that if you treat these issues, you can get through them. You can get better. I mean, I'd like to think that I'm living proof of that. And it's no different than, you know, you may not be hired as a security guard if you have a broken leg, but if you get that broken leg treated and it's all better, then sure, you can get that job. It should be exactly the same with mental health.
Before we let you go, is there anybody in particular who you think is doing this particularly well? Like, is there any place that you can point to where you think people have kind of figured this out? You travel. I don't know. There's just so many factors here. There are certain people's kind of religious beliefs. There are certain people's concept of what it means to be a strong person. People tell us that there are certain cultural barriers, right, within certain groups, but people say, well, that's just not something we do. You know, that's fine for them. That's not something my group, you know, does. Do you feel like there's a place that's done this well that you can point to, or is this just so uncharted territory for all of us?
I don't know anyone that's doing it perfectly, but I do know a community that's improved a lot. It is the veterans community. And the place we were 20 years ago when the Iraq and Afghanistan wars began is so different than where we are today. I mean, I remember back in 2004, one of the absolute heroes in my company who did it. I mean, it's something truly heroic in combat, the thing you read about in history books. Naturally, he came back with post-traumatic stress. And to make a long story short, he was just kicked out of the Marine Corps. In fact, he was made ineligible for VA care. Imagine that. Someone who deserved it more than any of us was actually made ineligible because of the way he was just booted out of the Marine Corps for how he came back. Well, that's changed a lot now. I mean, now you have our most elite special forces units practicing mindfulness, doing mental health training to make them better at their jobs, to proactively improve their mental health before they go into combat. You have great organizations like Home Base up in Massachusetts, based at Mass General Hospital and partnered with the Red Sox, that are encouraging veterans to come in and just take care of these issues when they get home. So my hope is that while the military and veteran community certainly hasn't figured it all out, the progress that we've made should be an inspiration to other groups of people as well, and should help set an example for how we take care of mental health for all of America.
Congressman Moulton, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you.